Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Zilong, and I come from the remote sensing lab at the McMaster University. And the previous presenter talking about the geoengineering, I think I'm going to show you a case of a geoengineering. And the topic today I'm going to present is Canadian wildfires and carbon emissions. And this work is done by myself and our lab PhD candidate, Junior Ota, and our supervisor, Professor Alan Gonsalmo. So let's turn the clock back to the summer of last year. And for those people who were in Canada, I think you might still remember during a certain period of time, you can smell that something is burning in the air. And for those people who were not here in Canada, I think you can recall some news about the unprecedented wildfires here in North America. And actually, in the preceding 2 decades of the year 2023, the average burned area is about 2.5 million hectares. So in our work, we're trying to answer these 2 questions. First, how many areas were burned from this climate crisis, and also how much carbon was emitted from these wildfires last year in Canada. And we turn to the satellite imagery, and the usage of satellite imagery for wildfire detection and analysis can be traced back to the 1970s when the first Landsat satellite was launched. And the reason we use the satellite imagery for these tags are threefold. First, this satellite imagery can provide us with a wide coverage, as shown in this imagery here. Second, it can provide frequent updates, which means the satellites can revisit the same location within a short period of time, for example, just 7 or 8 days. And satellite imagery is non-intrusive, which means we do not need to put any sensors on the ground. And also we use Google Earth Engine, which is an open geographic analysis system, so in which we can collect some satellite imagery data, as well as make some annotation for this data. So this web page here is the interface called Code Editor, and the lower part of this web page interface is called Google Earth Engine Map. We can easily annotate some samples. For example, these 2 red rectangles is manually labeled by myself. So in this way, we can get some annotations to train deep learning models. And now, after introducing the data and annotation, let's talk about the model. So we are using a deep learning model called deep residual networks that can take image patch as input and output whether the central point of an image patch is a burned area or not. And to take advantage of the multi-scale features of the input image patch, we use a multi-scale deep neural networks to get outputs with different spatial dimensions and merge the result to get a more robust and accurate burned area detection result. So let's see the number of our results. And we estimated that about 15.1 million hectares were burned from the wildfires in Canada last year. And this number is larger than the largest Caribbean country, Cuba, so which is about the size of 11 million hectares. So to put it into perspective, 1 hectare is about roughly the size of a 1.5 soccer field. So this result shows how significant the wildfires was last year in Canada. And now let's talk about the second objective of our work, which is carbon emission estimation. And this is a diagram for this task. And it includes 5 steps. Let's go through it one by one. So in the first steps, we need to identify those predictor variables. And keep in mind that we need to deal with the data across Canada, which is a very big geospatial data. So to solve this problem, we divide the burn area across Canada into 90 pieces. So we use this divide and conquer strategy to alleviate the computational challenges. So in the second step, we identify the target variables from a field observation data set founded by NASA. And in the third step, we select the model to train a regression model, which is a random forest. And in the step 4, we train the random forest using the predictor variables and target variables from the first 2 steps. In the last step, we then can use the trained random forest to make carbon emission estimation for both above ground carbon emission as well as soil surface carbon emission. In other words, we divide the carbon emission task into 2 parts, above ground and soil organic or surface. And this is the target variable that is collected by a project called Above. So this project is, as I mentioned, supported by NASA, and many US institutions and universities have participated in this project, and that's why we can use it to train our regression model for carbon emission estimation. And these are the variables, the predictive variables we used to train our regression model. And each row here represents one group of predictive variables. So we use all these predictive variables, but the last 2 rows for the above ground carbon emission estimation. And on the other hand, we use all variables but the tree canopy cover to train our soil organic carbon emission estimation model. So these settings are based on empirical evidence. So let's see the result. And using this figure is generated by the trained random forest for above ground carbon emission. And the R square here is about 0.61, and which is very good. So then we can use these trained random forest to get a carbon emission map across Canada, but I don't know where is the boundary. I can see boundary in my slide. And so the result we get for the above ground carbon emission is 29.2 megatons of carbon. So similarly, we can use a trained random forest to get this plot for their soil organic carbon emission estimation. And the R square here is 0.41, which is decent. So we use this trained random forest to get a map across Canada, and the result is 440.9 megatons of carbon. So combined together, we get a carbon emission of 533 megatons of carbon. So if emitted by a country, this number would rank 4th among all countries in terms of a terrestrial fossil carbon emission, so which is significant. We also did some variable importance analysis. So for example, in the figure A here, we found that climate data and fire weather indexes are the most important variable groups for above ground carbon emission. And similarly, we found that satellite surface reflectance and soil carbon concentration are the 2 most crucial groups of variables. And these are our findings in terms of variable importance. In conclusion, our experiments shows that about 15.1 million hectares were burned from the wildfires across Canada last year, which is greater than the largest Caribbean country, Cuba. And as for the carbon emission task, we have found that about 533 megatons of carbon were emitted. So if it emitted by a country, it will rank number 4 among all countries as a fossil fuel carbon emission. And we found that some driving factors that is crucial for carbon emission estimation, for example, the climate data, the fire weather indexes, the satellite surface reflectance bands, as well as soil carbon concentration. So combined together, we have presented a comprehensive framework for wildfire analysis, including 2 sections, the burn area detection and carbon emission estimation. Yes, with that, I would like to thank some founding agencies like NSERC, Canada Research Chair, Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and I also appreciate the CCI to make this research symposium possible. Thank you so much.